Journeys of Self-Discovery, that is the session that we have today. It brings together voices from writing, journalism, leadership, and social engagement. We are pleased to have with us Namita Devidayal, author of The Music Room, winner of the 2008 Vodafone Crossword Popular Book, as well as Aftertaste, the sixth string of Vilayat Khan. She is a journalist with the Times of India and a graduate of Princeton University. Joining her is Sanjiv Sarin, former CEO and Managing Director of Tata Coffee Limited, who has held leadership roles with Cadbury across the globe, in fact, 3 continents, including as country director in the Philippines. A certified leadership coach, he serves as an independent director and the trustee on company boards and NGOs, and is the author of The Other Side of the Mountain. The conversation will be moderated by Swati Kantamani, who heads NATCO Trust, the CSR arm of NATCO Pharma Limited. She holds degrees from the University of Oxford and the University of Hyderabad, and has previously worked in publishing as an editor. Over to you, Swati.
Thank you so much, Karuna. I'm going to be moderating this evening a session between Namita Devidayal and Sanjiv Sarin. In particular, their books, Tangerine, How to Read the Upanishads Without Giving Up Coffee, and Sanjeev's book, The Other Side of the Mountain, A CEO's Journey Through Spirituality. I want to start right at the beginning, and by that I mean the beginning of the books. Sanjiv, you begin with the 26/11 incident and connect it closely with the spiritual place you were at and how that helped you tide over the trauma of the incident, right? Namita, your story begins with an anticlimactic courtroom scene. We expect some drama, but we don't get any. Can you both tell us about these beginnings? How did these force you to look inward? One, and why did you think these were the right hooks to draw the readers in?
So I think that there is an inflection point in everyone's life that sort of takes you from an engagement with the outside world into a certain kind of an interiority. Most of us live very much engaged with an external world, a performative world, a world in which we're kind of like relying on a lot of props and validations from the tried and tested spaces. And then something happens and you feel like a loss of control. In my case, that happened when I was getting divorced. And I suddenly felt like the ground was moving under my feet, and someone who had always had curated my life, had a kind of a complete sense of what I wanted and almost pretty much got it every time, suddenly that wasn't happening. And so I went into the usual spaces of therapy and self-help and various things to just help myself feel better. And at that point, a childhood friend of mine said, just come with me to Rishikesh. And honestly, I'm one of those more cynical people. I was like, what is all this? Am I going to turn into a weirdo, join a cult, go to an ashram, etc.? It's not my space. It's not my scene. But I think you just kind of trust a certain instinct and you're a little bit desperate. And so I went. And that was my inflection point. And I'm so grateful. I'd like to share that, when you have a moment of suffering, etc., it's not always a bad thing because it can somehow turn you into a different direction, which may be better for you. So that was really the point at which I went with a sense of openness and surrender. And it was the beginning of a journey into these texts from Hindu philosophy that honestly had never ever been part of my life. I had never been exposed to this, even though I'm born Hindu, but, you know, grown up in a very liberal, cosmopolitan kind of a mindset. And I'm really grateful because what I discovered was quite contrary to anything that I had expected, which we can talk about further.
So let me add, to a certain point, pretty similar. Complete non-believer. I didn't know anything about religion. I didn't know gurus. I had nothing of that in my mind. So let me start even before 2611, how I got there. My wife, who's sitting right over here, she lost her father when she was 12. And obviously that throws a trauma in your life. And happily married for 20 odd years, I had a pretty serious injury. And I think that put a bit of a reminder that life is ephemeral and why, what, all those questions were coming. And she began searching. She would attend programs, courses, all that was happening in her life. Now, it is easy for me to say, okay, you're doing what you're doing, go ahead. It didn't feel right. I said, if she is going through that, let me try and understand what she's doing. It's very easy to say, listen, it's your issue, I don't know what you're going through, you're in conflict, sort yourself out. But then, somewhere at the back of my mind was telling me that, listen, that's not right. There's an unconditionality of my relationship with her. I need to be there to understand what is happening. Now, within that, she was going for the Art of Living program. Now, a question comes, why did I join her for that and not for the other multiple programs? I have no answer to that. And that's when I say it is destined to happen. Now, when that happened, my life began changing. So there are phases before I came to 2611. I became a practitioner. I found a lot of peace. Job was stressful, traveling, blah, blah, all that was happening. I saw a lot of peace coming in. Then from there, gradually, and I don't know why, I became a teacher with the Art of Living. That shifted me from being a practitioner to a teacher where I was spreading happiness to other people. The acid test came to me really, I think 2611, that listen, all that you have done, does it really work? And believe me, it worked so brilliantly. To be there for that night of 2611, actually 2711, we celebrate as my second birthday, having come out alive from that place. In those 14, 12 or whatever number of hours I was there, hearing all the shooting and all that's happening, I'm not going to go into that. The book is there to talk about all that part of it. But what was clearly coming was the mind was in an extreme level of calmness. Okay? Now, that meant I'm sitting inside. I wanted to get to bed. I'm saying I'm tired. And my wife calls me and tells me, what is your problem? You better stay awake in case they want to evacuate you. I was in that state of calmness, listening to Shri's sessions and all those things. Mind had come to a level where I sat, okay, if I'm going to escape, I need to label all my baggage so they know identified. I did all that in the space of this has to happen. And then I just sat down and said, okay, let me see what happens. Do the terrorists get me? Does the smoke get me? Or the fire brigade gets me? And there was a equanimity at that space of time. In the morning when the fire brigade came in, I put my thumbs up saying, I'm all right, rescue others before me. So that's where it had brought me. And that really was a defining that, listen, it is working. Being in the state of calm, being in a meditative space, being in the space, like she mentioned, being open to the grace, which is working with you to come out safely, I think was a huge, huge stamp that, listen, this really works.
Sanjiv, in your book, you've mentioned in a number of places how you had some sort of calling to temples, to gurudwaras, to many places of worship, shrines. And yet I think it's safe to say, right, that your journey is a spiritual one and not a religious one. Would you agree with that? So what is the difference between the two for you personally? Namita, you are very careful to call your book Tangerine and not Saffron. Why is it so important for you to make that distinction? And can you please speak to the same question of spirituality versus religion?
So, we won't name the political party that has appropriated a version of Hinduism and done its own number with it. But I very clearly wanted to distinguish myself and suggest that, so I use tangerine because it's like saffron, but it's not saffron. And I think for me, discovering the essence of these texts and what they're all about, which is so universalist, so the opposite of what is being done with this faith, really made me want to kind of celebrate it, re-own it in a way, and clearly distinguish from, the saffron vibe. And so as far as religion and spiritual, I think that any form of organized faith can lead one into all kinds of directions which may take you away from the essence of what's in that particular faith. And so broadly, when one talks about spirituality, I think it's a way of like sort of, trying to retreat from this organized religion. However, I think that religion in its true essence, whichever that may be, is something that works if you follow it in, with the right intention. I think anyone who uses religion to self-aggrandize or to diminish someone else or someone of another faith is not really practicing a religion. I mean, I think they're just doing their own thing. And it's literally like if somebody wears a tilak and puts on saffron or tangerine garbs and goes and does something crazy, it doesn't mean they're Hindu. So I think that all these terms have been appropriated, misused, distorted in ways that are now well beyond. That train has just gone from the station. So I guess spirituality is just a very convenient way of, just saying that I'm moving inwards.
So you talked about temples and stuff like that. Till very late in my life, I had a bit of a distance personally from temples because I had been through an experience where I went to a very famous one, and I'm not again going to name names, where I walked in with some money in my pocket and I walked out with an empty pocket. It was a scary period. But what I found interesting was I was avoiding these named places, but going to smaller places and just sit over there. Because there was peace, there was calmness, there was nobody running after me, and I just sat there. So I could sense a shift. I mentioned, I think, in the hostel, college hostel, now can you imagine going to a gurudwara? 3-4 of us would walk down someday to a gurudwara and just sit down over there because the kirtan was so calming. Similarly in churches. So there was this kind of a dichotomy I was going through at that time. And a lot of the temple visits and all happened because of my wife, where she was leading me into those. I would go because she wanted to, but then I was feeling the impact of that calmness, that feeling that was coming in. To me, spirituality and religion are vitally different because religion, to my mind, is institutions. It is ways of doing things. There are rituals. Spirituality is humanity, humanness of living away from the material, like you mentioned, going inward, being in touch with yourself. Religion can lead you into spirituality, and spirituality can lead you into religion. Both can happen, but religion can divide, spirituality unites, as far as I'm concerned. And that really is where the difference is.
That's beautiful. So in both your books, I think, guides, teachers, mentors play a crucial role. I mean, guide teachers, mentors are central to any spiritual journey. Sanjiv, Sri Ravi Shankar ji features prominently as a guiding light. Namita, you look at the Upanishads for guidance and clarity. So, in both of your opinions, how do texts and lived experience inform each other? And I'd just like to add out another, because for people who are starting out, who are spiritually curious and looking for the right teacher, in that context of how today the word guru invokes so much fear and condemnation, what do you suggest they look for? And how do they know that this person is legit? You know,
I think it's a very interesting question because there's so many charlatans roaming around who are just doing all kinds of things and performing miracles and taking, whatever. So I think that's a very personal choice. And I think this word guru can go from anything from somebody who's just some version of a therapist in a village offering like nice sound bites on life, to somebody who's actually done the work and really studied these texts and has the ability to teach them. Now, the thing about these kinds of texts, I'm such a novice that I feel like an imposter even talking about them. But the one thing I will say is that it's really important to have a teacher rather than attempt to read these on your own, because they're so counterintuitive to everything that we think about who we are and what we, the way we approach the world, that you really need somebody to sort of like very gradually break them down and help you to dismantle your conditioned views of life to reach a whole other version of life, which is that you are the whole. That is the essence of the Vedic texts, and that you are what you see outside, and the universe is you, very broadly. Those are the Mahavakyas. So it's very hard to say who is the right guru, and I think even that is grace, finding that right teacher. I happened to find a teacher who came from a very secular world. She was an economist with the UN, and then one day had this epiphany and wanted to go back and study these Hindu philosophy, and spent 3.5 years in an ashram doing that, and then came out, and the way she articulates it appeals to me because my intellect needs to be satisfied. I'm not a blind faith kind of person. I always challenge these notions, and she was able to do that and also contemporize them. So I think for me that worked. For a lot of others, the bhakti path is a much more sort of relevant one. So I really think that finding that right teacher is a matter of your own luck and grace, and something has to just click.
Yeah. I was searching for the book because something struck me what she said about blind faith. And I have a little observation, and I just want to read part of it. It began because I was watching a kid swimming in the pool, a 3 or 4 year old kid, and the father was taking him around. To me, it looked like blind faith. Okay, the child had no other way of trusting anybody. The father was innate faith. So for faith to flourish, one must be open and accepting. At the same time, the other person must exemplify trustworthiness, care, sensitivity, transparency, consistency, and an absence of hidden agendas. This dynamic resembles the connection between the child and the parent in the swimming pool, with the key difference being that we have evolved from blind faith to faith with eyes open. Such relationships set us free, where you have understood the person, observed him, and it goes beyond trust. Trust leads to faith. Okay? And here you have reached that place, and then you have faith. It's no longer a blind faith. Then you have given yourself to the person because he's there for you with no self-agendas in that. So that is just about the blind faith part of it. Sorry, again, what was the question?
There were two. On how do texts and learned experiences sort of inform each other? And how do you know whether this is the right guru?
So yeah. Actually, texts are useful because they give you knowledge. Learned experience to me is really where it grounds and embeds inside you. If you don't have that experience or walk the path, it is pure knowledge. And typically they say that the texts, if you take the example of a washing machine, the texts are the detergent. They cleanse you. Devotion and faith is the softener, which brings it soft and wearable and usable. So they actually complement each other. Okay, you cannot have pure faith, you cannot have only knowledge. It just makes you very harsh. And between bhakti and knowledge, ultimately, knowledge leads to bhakti. And if you haven't gotten to bhakti, you will not feel the humane, emotional self which takes you to the next level. So they are actually complementary. Yeah. Now, how do you judge the person is a guru? Actually, how is the word guru created? Gu means darkness. Ru is remover. So guru really is a person who is removing darkness in your life. If that is the role of a guru, what are we worried about? Okay, we just have to be there, be it a teacher, be it a coach or whatever. Okay, in my life, before Shri came in, I must honestly say, when I reflect, I had two gurus at home. My sister, she was mentally challenged. Observing her, you see her, pure bundle of love, in the moment, no future, no past, sheer faith in you because she's so dependent on you. Watching her, the level of patience which you evolve, the level of observation, because she cannot express herself, you have to understand between her actions, what does she mean, what she's saying. That itself sensitizes you so much. So much so, as from there, I began supporting a school called Sadhana School in Bombay, where you go there and there are multiple kids being taught, and then I'm a trustee with Tamahar in Hyderabad. To me, the people who are there, who are teaching these kids, are as much gurus. They are giving their life to handle these children. That needs an amazing capability, a commitment to make their life simpler. Okay. How do you know the person is truthful, is your guru? You know when you're struck. It hits you like a knock on the head or on the heart. You got to question yourself. Is he seeking blind faith? Or is he open to questioning? If he's open to questioning, then you know there is something deeper inside, and then you can follow. It's interesting, Shri had come to Manila, and we were there, and he came home. Reuters had come to interview him at home. And he made an observation which struck me so much. He said, the Reuters editor said, I have seen so many spiritual leaders. They always have some skeletons inside. You are the only one I've seen where there's no skeleton in your cupboard. And Shri replied, if you've come only to give, what is there to hide? Now, if that to me shows the genuineness of somebody worth following. So ultimately it comes to really, have you knocked and made sure somebody is there? But you can make mistakes because there are enough and more people who have gone the wrong way doing it.
Both of your books approach spirituality from very different lenses, right? An urban, cultural look at the Upanishads and a corporate leadership journey. How would each of you define spirituality for a 21st century urban audience? And I mean, the two seem so oppositional, right? Corporate life and spirituality. Can ambition, material success, money making actually coexist with spirituality? And is there such a thing as a balance between the two?
So this is one of the biggest misconceptions about, the binary between the spiritual and the material world. And it's really, frankly, absurd because we've started living with binaries as opposed to having layered, a layered existence. And I think when you treat yourself as a kind of a concentric circle where, your core is the spiritual core, and then you operate at many other levels depending on the context, it's a much more intelligent way to live, right? You cannot be one or the other, this material and spiritual. I don't know where it came from because, again, my little understanding of Hindu philosophy is that ideas like dharma, artha, and kama. Artha means, the acquisition of material things, and kama is desire, which doesn't necessarily mean only carnal desire. It's any kind of desire. So it very much celebrates ambition, etc. But when combined with dharma, which is doing it the right way, you kind of eventually do lead into moksha, right? I mean, this is very simplistic, but the idea is that there is no real divide between the two. It's how you navigate those spaces. So whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're in the corporate world or engaging in any aspect of life as a householder or, any aspect of material life, it's how you engage. It's using the buddhi to kind of like do it right, the wisdom. And that eventually kind of leads you into a space of, looking for something a little more than all the things that you're acquiring, which is why I love the idea that there are these 4 broad parameters with which you chronologically lead your life, which is the brahmacharya stage, where you're a student and a celibate. And then you move into grahast, which is when you start acquiring. You acquire your family, you acquire, a certain bunch of relationships and money and wealth and all the things that you're kind of acquiring. And at some point, you move into what is described as vanaprasth, but it's actually not literally going into the forest. It's a forest state of mind. It's a contemplative state of mind because, what are you going to do with that one extra car and that one new wife and that, you know what I mean? It's like, whatever. I mean, I'm just being facetious, but like the idea of, the greed that comes with living has a kind of a diminishing return to it, which is why the idea of moving into a contemplative state makes sense, where you can be in the material world, but you gradually start retreating. You recede a little. You're less obsessed. And then finally, of course, the sort of sannyas, which again doesn't mean that you have to like wander off into the mountains. It means that you really let go. The greatest riddle mentioned in the Gita is that why do people, what is it that is absolutely inevitable, which is death, and why do people live as if they don't know that? It's something that really boggles the mind, right? But when you kind of befriend the inevitable, you want to just chart your life out in a way that makes sense. It's quite logical. And so this differentiation between, material and ambition, etc., and spiritual is a very unfortunate thing. And honestly, I have no desire to like let go of any of the things that I have in my life, that the comforts, etc. I need my avocado toast and all that in the morning. But I know that by reading these and by being exposed to a different way, it's just helped me engage with myself and with the world very differently. So it's a self-fulfilling thing. Why would I not do that then, Yeah.
Let me just add to what you said. This dichotomy between money, profit, and spirituality, to me, it is how you use the money. If you look at the Dead Sea, it is water which is stagnant, and you only find dead fish over there. You have the Ganges, which is a flowing river, and it cultivates everything afterwards. So money, if it is not plowed forward to do good, to do service, doesn't help. Then it becomes detrimental. But money which is flowing does good. And therefore, there is no reason to say profit is bad. Because if there's no profit, business will not grow. And there are so many back-end linkages to growth of business, people, humanity living. It cannot be bad. Okay? So it's ultimately how you use that money which defines good or bad between and there's no conflict. Okay? And defining spirituality, there is this huge, I don't know today, that spirituality is something mystical, okay, something out there somewhere, okay, that you go to Vanaprasth and that's where you will find moksha and all that. My learning of spirituality, and I'm just reading from the book, to me, spirituality is about connecting with oneself, decluttering the mind, clearing away confusion, and being open to experiencing the joy in little things around us, the flowers, the fresh air, the environment, and like children, being fully immersed in the moment. It's about appreciating the small treasures in life. Spirituality enables us to empty our minds and sharpen our focus on what truly needs to be done. It emphasizes the importance of being accountable and demanding performance while also appreciating the human behind that. It fosters awareness, allowing us to respond thoughtfully instead of merely reacting. It is about knowing, accepting, and believing in oneself. Importantly, spirituality is not about renouncing life, like you mentioned, and retreating into solitude. It involves actively engaging in society while maintaining calm and equanimity. Life will always present highs and lows, but spirituality enhances our ability to recover more quickly from the lows and extend the highs.
I just want to add one quick thing, which is since I have based a lot of my studies specifically on Hindu philosophy and Hindu texts, there's a text called the Ashtavakra Gita, which was written by a king, Raja Janak, who was the father of Sita, and he was very much an embedded king. He lived with in a kingdom, and yet he had sort of mastered this idea of, I guess, detached engagement, and I think that's the secret, that you're engaged, but you're not entangled, if that makes sense. And these ideas are really important because it's actually a mastery over your emotions, your external circumstances, and so in no way does it suggest that you have to give one up to get to the other. In fact, life starts becoming the playground, like the curriculum where you keep applying whatever you've learned. It's much more interesting to do that than to sort of move away and then try and just live in an academic sort of abstract way with these ideas and all that, in my opinion.
You lived only half world,
Yeah.
if you've taken one of them.
Very interesting things you both said is the detached attachment, and I think Marie Kondo of the mind, right? Yeah. And the spirit cleaning up really and meeting yourself. One, I think last question before I open up to the audience. The subtitle of your book, Namita, suggests, sort of a tension between spirituality and modern comfort. So what does not giving up coffee really stand for? And Sanjiv, what really is on the other side of the mountain?
Please don't give up coffee. I survived on that. I started coffee.
I'm with the coffee man. So actually, the title is How to Read the Upanishads Without Giving Up Coffee, and it's really a metaphor, obviously. So there's a little story behind that, which is that the book was called Tangerine, and when it came to the publishing of it and marketing and sales gets involved, they were like, bhai, what is Tangerine? And where do we pitch this to the bookstores and distributors? Is it a book about color? Is it a book about fruit? Is this going to go into the food section? You need to explain what it says, right? So they were like, you have to use Hinduism or something in the subtitle. And I was like, oh, that sounds so boring, like a journey into Hinduism and all that is not me. And I'm a little irreverent, and the whole tone of the book is a little irreverent. And so I went to Chat GPT. And I was like, can you help me write I pasted my introduction and I said, can you help me come up with some subtitles? And they said this. And so I was like, marvelous. It just kind of describes everything. Basically, what it's saying is exactly what we were just saying, that you absolutely don't have to give up real life to study the Upanishads. And the whole point is to engage at many levels, right? So you engage with the study of spirituality and religion, and you live in the very real world and keep applying it and keep, you know, like referring back, and it makes you just much more mindful, I think.
So coming to what the other side of the mountain is. So when I look back, I think everybody goes through the highs and lows in life. And it's important to understand that. What tends to happen is you see the success of the successful people, but you do not see the difficulties they have gone through in life. Okay? So to me, the spiritual path which took me, you will climb the mountain whether through the spiritual path or the stressful part. The only difference is that when you go along with the spiritual path, while you reach the top, the life looks very different. Okay? And that is the other side of the mountain, where it is lush green, golden fields, blue skies, birds flowing all over the place, and that's what represents in the book. What I'm also going to do is, give me 2 minutes more, is this is my view of what the title meant. There are people who refer to the title, and I'm going to read some of them and understand what they are saying. Yeah. So one of them has said, a life that climbed one side of the corporate, is a remarkable memoir about a life that climbed one side of the corporate mountain, only to find, by looping around to the other side, a path to fulfillment and deeper purpose. So that is one interpretation of the other side of the mountain. And then you go to the foreword, it's very beautifully said. Sanjiv invites us to climb the mountain with him and view to the other side. It is a beautiful and therapeutic view because the green valley that he shows us can rejuvenate us and bring great calm and joy into our life. So different people have responded differently, and including what my interpretation was.
Thank you so much, both of you. We'd now like to open up questions from the audience. This has been absolutely fantastic. Such a privilege and honor to be here with you both.
Same.
Thank you for your candid and deep responses. I mean, there are points in both the books where they're both by a body of water, where they meet themselves in a very deep, I think, vulnerable way, and they both have tears that run down their faces. None of this is explainable, and yet it's you feel so taken into the book, and you feel so seen and understood by the books. So thank you so much, both of you. I wish you all the very best, and we'd like to open up. Yes.
You talked about tears. I got a message from a person saying I read page dash dash, forget which page, and I had tears in my eyes. Now, such kind of feedback just tells you the power of going on the path.
Absolutely. Questions from anyone? There's a volunteer who's, yeah.
Hi, Namita. This is for you. Music Room has been one of my favorite books. So you're a musician first. You learned from Dontutai, who learned from the great Kesarbai Kerkar. So how did your music, their music, help you on your path to spirituality?
They're so connected in so many ways. And, you know, it was just very beautiful for me to kind of connect the dots. So basically, I would like to suggest that Hindu philosophy, Vedic thought is much more than religion. You know, it includes an aesthetic way of life. It includes a certain scientific disposition, which we see in certain Ayurveda, etc. It includes, of course, the actual spiritual religious texts. But to talk about the aesthetic way, I really found that a lot of the training that I'd got as a student of Indian classical music was premised on this whole idea of what I discovered in the Upanishads. For example, the idea of circularity versus a linear approach, right? So that's very much a very basic tenet of Hindu thought. And that's exactly the way Indian classical music approaches, you know, you come back to the sum. You keep coming back to the sum. And you kind of like play with your notes and your melodies and the rag within that circle. So that was one idea. But the most powerful thing that struck me was the fact that, you know, these rags that I was learning, they're all anonymous. They haven't been, we don't know who created them and wrote them, and they're such extraordinary sort of like repositories of incredible music, and they've come down over centuries, and it's like an oral tradition, and it's changed along the way and been embellished along the way, and yet the essence of, say, Rag Bhoop remains the same, whether you've heard it, you know, in Haveli Sangeet in some early century or by somebody, Shankar Mahadevan, singing it today. That says that there's something very potent, you know, and similarly, I'm quite fascinated by how something like the Upanishads, etc., have come down over centuries, fairly intact, through the Guru-Shishya Parampara. There must be something in it that is quite extraordinary that has sustained, you know, and it's a lived reality. It's very much a lived tradition. So I was really able to find a lot of these connections in the two, and without realizing it, music is a kind of a thread throughout the book. And, you know, music is an offering to the divine, and so that is the ultimate.
Hi, this can be answered by any of you, but spirituality and ambition and having an aspiration are antithesis to each other. They are, but I think in the present context, we talk about both of them in the same tone or in the same parallels. So can you talk about that part where I'm sure he will be, because we talk about ambition, we talk about corporate drive, we talk about goals, and then there is spirituality that talks about being happy with what we have. So,
Can I do it? So, ambition, if you get stuck in that, you have a problem. But if ambition is giving you a direction, it's fantastic. Okay? When you get agitated and stuck, that disturbs your mind. But if you have a goal and you start working upon it, then it is giving you a direction. And what spirituality does is to say, okay, keep it there, now work on it. Because the only thing you have in your thing is, here is a goal, how do I get there? If you get stuck on the goal, it's going to agitate you. Making sense? Spirituality tells you to be happy with what you have. Spirituality also tells you that, listen, you have to maximize what you can do, your capabilities. It is telling you, don't get stuck on greed, don't get stuck on things which are, no, I can't say beyond your reach, but you should not get overcommitted, not even overcommitted, something entangled is the right word with that. Because that deviates your mind from being a stressful performer.
Also, I think it helps you to know that when something doesn't go your way, there's another way which may be right for you, right? So you sort of surrender a little bit of control. This desire to control the universe without realizing that you're just a speck in a very interconnected universe is a very delusional kind of a approach to life, right? Like when you pollute some air in this part of the world, it's going to travel, right? And so it's just that, like we're all living in a very, I mean, to me, like what I learned from the Upanishads have ecological ramifications, psychological ramifications. They're really about so many things beyond just being a good person or whatever.
Sanjiv ji, my question is a variation of the question that you just asked. And to create the context for the question, in 1988, Amir Khan debuted with a movie called Kamat Se Kamat Tak, which is called QSQT. But today, QSQT stands for Quarter Se Quarter Tak. The relentless pressure on the CXOs and corporate leaders leaves very little room for contemplation and for developing the spiritual temperament. So my question again, I mean, I'm sure you've answered this in part. Is it possible to develop that spiritual temperament in the age of instant gratification and relentless corporate pressure?
So I'll answer it in two ways. One is, where does quarter to quarter lead the organization? Is it great? Is that a non-stressful organization? Is that an organization you would like to work with? Are you committed to it? What does it do to the organizational culture? Okay, that's one part of the entire thing. The other part is that, listen, you don't determine the environment, all right? You can't control it. Within that, how do you keep your peace of mind? Ultimately, our job through spirituality, one is to be at peace with yourself, and through that, impact the environment around you. So you got to see, I have a quarter to quarter pressure. What do I need to stay calm and be comfortable to make the right decisions? Otherwise, the next quarter is going to fail.
Namita garu, most of our classical compositions are devotional. Some are philosophical, but mostly devotional. I wouldn't say that I'm a believer, but when I hear the Sahityam, there is something, peace, call it peace, tranquility, spirituality, if you may. So what is it that, you know, the lyric is actually devotional, but then even if you are not a believer, why is it such a beautiful feeling, such a calm, peaceful, tranquil feeling? Is that spirituality?
I think, okay, so the way I would describe this is that, you know, all music has an element of technique and perfection within it. And usually that elicits a kind of a wah, right? And sometimes it just transcends the technique and the, you know, the qualities of the rag and sort of like reaches a point where it just connects you with something higher than yourself. And I think that's when you say, ah, it's not wah, you're not praising anything anymore, you're connecting. And I think there's a reason that every single place of worship, whether it's a church or a gurdwara or a temple or a Sufi shrine, the offering is music, because I think it just takes you above yourself. And I remember I was with, I was in Ajmer Sharif, and I actually asked the Kawali who was sitting over there, why is it that you all sing over here? You know, and he said to me that music is a shortcut to the divine. Even if a murderer is going out to murder someone and he happens to hear even a temple bell, without even realizing it, he'll stop in his tracks for 5 seconds before going ahead and doing what he has to. So there is some power in music that takes you, I think it helps you to just move beyond the self, you know, and that's what it is. We're always looking for that moment of like transcendence, right? That moment that you call Sat, Chit and Anand.
Yeah, this question is for both of you or either of any one of you. I'm as a very beginner in this entire journey. My question to you is, when you say spirituality is going inward, what are the top 3 questions or top 5 questions you ask yourself for going inward? Or what are the top 5 suggestions or top 3 suggestions you give yourself for going inward? And do these questions and suggestions, do they change day by day or month on month? Or month after month, sorry.
Okay, so I guess one very obvious question would be, who am I really and why am I on this planet? What am I supposed to eventually do with myself? Is it just kind of live from birth to death and do all the things that you're meant to do? Or is it something a little more than that, that, my human intelligence privileges me to do? So that would be one question I would suggest. I guess that's what came to me. Another might be, the Buddhist question of like, why is there suffering in the world? These are questions that come to us at some point in our lives, of course, and that's what propels you to explore beyond the obvious.
Let me build on. I think one of the things you also, how open are you to experience this path? It can be scary, it can be confusing. You go down the path of asking, who am I? It'll take you ages to find out who you are. I'm still trying to locate who am I. It's part and parcel of life, but are you open to walk the path and explore what comes your way? Be open to it, okay? And I don't know how come these questions are leading. I have 5 guiding principles to living with intention. Okay. Meditate, be sensitive to others, serve society however you can, stay mindful of your actions, find your mojo because you control your life's path, connect your head, your heart, and your hands in whatever you do. Okay? Now, in the morning today, Mr. Sarthi was there, who's the Nobel laureate. He made a very powerful statement saying, the power of commitment, okay, to a cause is so fundamental to taking you anywhere you have. He says you're born with 2 qualities. One is consciousness, one is compassion. Okay? Compassion is inherent to you. Like a mother will go to a child if he falls without questioning, going to the dictionary or Wikipedia and saying, my kid has fallen, what do I do? You will naturally go. That's compassion. It's boundless. Are you seeping into that ability of being compassionate? Okay? And that automatically softens you and makes you extend yourself to humanity.
And with that, thank you so much, panelists and moderators. We have started the day with, with Kailash Satyarthi talking about, compassion. And what a beautiful ending, for today, day 1. Again, on a note of compassion. Thank you all so much. We will see you tomorrow.